For those of you who don't know, MediaKind is a software company who provides solutions for streaming and personalization of video. We work with thousands of customers across the globe, including some of the world's biggest brands, such as Comcast, NBA, and of course, while we're here this afternoon, DAZN. I'm going to welcome James Pierce, who is SVP of Broadcast and Streaming on stage momentarily. I don't think DAZN needs much of an intro, but if a picture is worth 1,000 words, then a video is hopefully worth a few more. So with that, let's welcome James on stage and roll the video.
Here we go! Countdown with me!
Reshaping the way people consume sport. It's part of our vision.
Revolution is groundbreaking.
This is the next step.
We're so happy you're here with us.
32 of the world's top clubs.
The club game has never seen a competition of this scale before.
30 segundos.
Salut à tous ceux qui...
Allô?
It's fun, isn't it?
Soy dell'Inter.
River Plate.
قبل الانتقال.
Bastoni to seal the win for Inter.
Presented by our friends at Michelob.
You have to perform at your best.
Really looking forward to this one.
Welcome to the press. The universe did provide.
The supernova of champions.
The world's finest teams.
They are good.
Messi!
Una meraviglia!
On the way to the airport.
Hi, Claude Makalele. It's nice to have you here.
This is why we love this game.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
One against one, go!
What a beautiful moment.
It's marvelous! It's magical!
This is crazy, right?
Okay, what a fantastic reminder of a summer of live sports, provided and streamed by DAZN with MediaKind. So, if we go back to the start, James, if we think back to that first moment where you hear that you're going to be responsible for $1 billion worth of sports streaming rights, what was your immediate reaction?
Well, I'll try and keep it polite, but it was a certain shock about what we'd signed up to do, and the timescales that we were given to do it. Like this, we found about it in December, and this was going live on air in June. And I think the other big shock to me was that we were the only broadcaster showing it globally, which is a very different setup, I think, for these sort of events. If you compare it to the Olympics and other World Cups, you'll have 30, 40 plus broadcasters, whereas we were the only broadcaster that was showing it, and it just meant the scale of what we were doing was even more scary.
So, if we think about a global live streaming event, preparation is everything. What did those months of build-up and preparation look like for you?
So it's sort of January 3rd, I think it all kicked off with our first sort of workshop just to understand what on earth this all meant. Mm-hmm. And it was really, that was just where we were trying to understand what could we do, what did the business want us to do, what was the impact of being the only broadcaster showing this. And so the first bit was really just defining what it was. Mm-hmm. And the aim was to get that locked down as soon as possible, but as the nature of these things, I think a month before, we still weren't 100% sure what we were going to deliver. Okay. So the first bit was sort of defining what it was going to look like, and then we got into the specifics of it. We had like how much localization we were going to do and planning around that, how much sponsorship was that we were going to have on the various different feeds. Ultimately, that all came together. I think we ended up with 25 different variants between sponsorship and localization. And then we brought in the concept of either a premium or a freemium product. And that just doubled like the amount of content we were going to be creating. And just to put it into context in terms of numbers, there were 63 matches in Club World Cup. Yep. But with all the variants that we were creating, it meant we were actually broadcasting more than 3,000 events just for the 4-week tournament.
Okay.
So that was the first bit of planning, working out what it was we were going to do. I think then the next bit was really understanding how we were going to create that content. With the decision to go with an HDR as a premium solution, that added quite a lot of complexities into our production workflows. A lot of our production sites don't support HDR, so we had to do a lot of conversion between HDR and SDR to make it work. And then like there's all of the sponsorship that we needed to overlay on it, all of the different graphical variants. The whole production piece and the partners we worked with to get that set up was a big bit. And then once we've got the content, it was then all about distributing it. And this is where MediaKind really came into it for us. So working out how we were going to distribute those 3,000 feeds globally, and a big question mark was to how many people.
Yeah.
We had no idea how popular this content was going to be. We didn't know how many sub-licensees were going to broadcast this content. So then a huge amount of planning had to go into where we were going to locate our infrastructure, where we were going to locate our head ends, where was MediaKind going to deploy their infrastructure, what CDNs were we going to use. I think we found CDNs we'd never heard of in different countries where DAZN had never been. And so working with them to get all of that set up was a monumental task in terms of planning and getting ready. And I guess then the last bit was just really about getting the broadcast operations piece set up. We had 50 concurrent HDR events happening at one time. So we needed to uplift our MCR to be able to monitor all those HDR feeds, whereas before we would do 1, 2, 3 HDR events a week. Running 50 on one day was just a next scale up.
Wow, I mean, there's some pretty big numbers in there. Were there any countries that were watching a lot more games than you expected?
So yes, there were. So the Middle East got a lot of interest, which was good. And then South America, we saw a lot of viewership there. And I think what it meant is as the tournament went on, once we knew where viewership was, we really had to optimize the workflow to make the experience as good as possible, because we get all the metrics about how the streams are working. So yeah, there were some real shocks. I mean, obviously the US was big because that's where it was being hosted. Yep. And the time zone, Brazil, Argentina, typically countries where DAZN had done very little, we were getting some really big viewership.
That's fantastic. So you utilized a multi-cloud strategy for FIFA Club World Cup. So you're working in, I'll say in alphabetical order, AWS and Azure. What did this multi-cloud strategy bring you that a single cloud strategy wouldn't have given you?
Considering the content, I think the most important thing, and it's probably the word that was used the most during all of the planning, it was about stability. So this just had to work. We had to make sure that the content got onto the screens of our customers. And relying on a single cloud to do that just felt risky. So we very early on decided to go with a multi-cloud approach. But that brought its own challenges. Making sure you've got sort of feature parity between your cloud providers is really key. Like if you need to fail over from one to the other, you can't lose features. So there was a big piece of work to get that feature parity across the different cloud providers.
Okay. And so you worked obviously with a number of different vendors and partners on FIFA Club World Cup. How did you sort of manage and orchestrate them to keep them all pointing in the same direction when obviously you're very, very busy with a lot of the other planning? What did that look and how did that work?
So I think it was about choosing our partners early on in the process, so we could really lock down what it was we were going to do with them. And I think also where we could choose our trusted partners that we'd worked with and we know we can rely on, then that was really key. Yeah. And then it's just really through the whole process of planning, building, testing, and ultimately running the events, having those vendors working closely with us. Like the number of workshops we did with the vendors to make sure it worked, having on-site presence, and just basically building on the partnerships that we already have and sort of not having to worry about all of it ourselves, trusting our partners that they were going to do a good job.
Yeah. And was it like an all-hands-on-deck moment where you had a problem where a partner really came through and helped you out?
Yes, definitely. I would have loved to have said that the tournament went absolutely smoothly. I think in terms of the customer output, we were really pleased with. We didn't lose a minute of live match play. Yeah. But there were moments. It was like one of those swans or duck under the water paddling furiously. We had one of our head end components. We started seeing some real problems with, and in a normal event for DAZN, that would have been properly stressful, and potentially we'd have seen an impact on screen. But because we built that relationship with MediaKind, and we knew you were there as not just as a backup, but as an active workflow for us. Yes, we were nervous, but we were nowhere near as stressed as we could have been. And
And I think what's important with this as well, it's not just about the software in the cloud, but it's about the people who are actually running this. Obviously, you talked about your organization a bit there. MediaKind was putting people and experts on site. We had our global monitoring going on as well. Did that give you an extra degree of confidence?
Absolutely. Like the proactive way we were working together, and how reactive, and I think made that a success, and it made us feel more comfortable that as we were running into the events and we were seeing the infrastructure spinning up and turning on, you were giving us the confidence by your level of monitoring and observability that it was just going to work. And like when kickoff happened, it was boring, right? It was just working. So.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that. Every morning when my wife leaves the house, I say, please have a boring day. Because sometimes that's what you want, isn't it?
Is.
The excitement sometimes can get a bit too much. I'm sure we could probably spend hours talking about the FIFA Club World Cup, but maybe let's move on to maybe some more of the technology around this. How do you view latency at DAZN? Is it something which you want to sort of get to the lowest possible level, or is it something where maybe sort of broadcast equivalent is acceptable to you?
Latency is a topic that we talk about a lot in DAZN, and I think streamers in general talk about latency. And I think there's different use cases where latency impacts you more or less. So there's one use case we see where the OTT stream is more of a companion and sits alongside the broadcast content. In those sort of scenarios, it just needs to be good enough that it's not wildly out in terms of latency. And the nice thing with that is you can actually achieve those latencies without doing a fundamental uplift or change of the workflow. You can just optimize what you've got, and you can sort of get close enough. Sub 20 seconds is the sort of latency between 15 and 20 seconds for that sort of use case. But then you do have other use cases where having even lower latency is better. Like we all talk about spoilers coming through on social media, on X, or you want a WhatsApp group with your friends and they talk about a goal and all that sort of stuff. And I think that latency is harder to achieve. Because you've fundamentally got to swap out the reliable parts of the workflow to achieve that. And quite often you've got to consider certain features and functionality are not always supported. So it becomes a real compromise sometimes. But latency is a big thing for us, I'd say.
So, I mean, we've done a lot of work with the NBA over the last 3 seasons to bring latency down from glass to glass 20 seconds to 12 to 8 seconds this season moving forwards. But part of the challenge for that is the variety of devices that they need to support. They support a very wide number of devices. Is that a sort of an intrinsic part of the challenge for you as well? Because I believe you support even more devices as part of your app ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely. And each device can perform differently. Some devices don't even support the lower latency protocols. Other devices do. Other devices need more buffering to be able to handle and make sure the stream works. So trying to get a consistent latency across devices is really challenging.
And sort of how do you manage, or how do you view the sort of the balance between reliability, latency, and quality?
I mean, ultimately, reliability is the most key thing. If you can't show the content to your customers, what's the point? So yeah, I'd say reliability's up there, but then we can start sort of trading off sometimes between features and latency. One of the challenges that we have faced, and I know there's potentially ways around it, is when you start adding personalization and DAI into some of the low latency protocols, they don't necessarily always work well together. So I think it's more of a trade-off of features than reliability. I don't think we'd ever compromise on the reliability of a stream.
So for you, the key is reliability. I mean, it's sports streaming, it's live sports streaming. You don't get a second go. You can't ask someone to take that penalty again.
Exactly.
But then from there onwards, it is about just more the balance of adding the occasional feature here and there whilst keeping the latency as low as is achievable.
Exactly. And I don't think a day goes past when we don't talk about latency. Every time we make a change to the workflow, one of the fundamental questions we ask is, what's that going to do to the latency? You know, adding another production step, what's that going to do to the latency? What technology are you using to deliver your video around? All impacts latency. So it's always something that's at the forefront of our mind.
I think what's interesting for us is customers such as yourselves, as MBA, who are focused maybe on more global streaming. Latency seems to be less of a concern. It is about that reliability. When we do then start to talk to customers, maybe who are only focusing on a single country or region, because it's intrinsically easier, latency does become a bit more of a target, and sort of getting down to that 6-second mark does seem to be a very, very popular conversation at the moment. So is that something you'd like to sort of aspire to in the future?
Yeah, and I think we're getting there. Like the protocols have been out for a while, and they're becoming more robust. So I don't think we're a long way away. Like historically, you can see latencies of 40, 50 plus seconds on some streaming services, and I think we've made some good progress. But we definitely aren't where we want to be. We want to be as good, if not better, than broadcast, and we want to be. We don't want spoilers happening through various other communication channels. Awesome.
Some exciting work for us to do together then.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think going into the FIFA Club World Cup, what was really interesting for me, because sort of being involved in it with DAZN, I was quite focused on it, whereas I think a number of my friends who are big football fans maybe were not so focused on it going in there because their teams were involved. But I think as the tournament went on and it got more and more traction and more news coverage, and I think the numbers you saw, you were seeing more and more people starting to view. I think what surprised all of them was the fact they could actually watch the games for free.
Yep.
Which obviously we knew going in. Now, we worked with you on the premium streams for the premium customers who wanted to pay with HDR, HLG, HEVC, Dolby Audio. I think I've got all the acronyms in there. Yep. Okay, so that for the premium subscribers. But I think the really interesting thing for us, and the thing actually that our video engineers were most proud of, was the freemium 720p stream. There was that balance there between trying to lower the bit rate to its lowest possible level whilst maintaining acceptable video quality. I think the end results spoke for themselves. My friends who are football fans were quite happy watching the freemium streams, and they really enjoyed what they were seeing. So, as this has really got people talking. Kind of, what was the driving force behind the freemium setup for you?
So I think that the first two real drivers were primarily about getting awareness of DAZN out there, and so making it free meant a lot of people knew about it, and sort of getting that accessibility piece. So more and more people could watch the content who weren't necessarily going to want to subscribe to DAZN, but it sort of gave them a flavour of what DAZN was, and so in the future it meant we had a broader breadth of people that knew about what DAZN was. So there was sort of a business drive around that, but as a consequence of that, there was some really nice technical benefits that came out of it. We talked around the bit rate. I do actually think we did too good a job with making it look good at a lower bit rate. I think we should have made it look a bit worse. But hey,
learning for next year.
Yeah. So, but reducing the bit rate had a huge impact on our CDN challenges. It just meant we didn't need to scale the CDNs quite as much as we would have. So there was that. But then the other really interesting thing that came out of it was piracy seemed to no longer be a problem. If it's free, why is it going to be pirated?
Yep.
So it sort of helped us on that front, that we didn't need to have maybe a lot more of the content security pieces that we would do on our premium content. It just meant we didn't have to worry about that. Yeah. Things like DRM that at times have caused problems in terms of being able to scale. We didn't have to worry about that. We didn't have to do watermarking and like all of the things that you do for your top domestic rights. So it worked well in both senses, I'd think.
And I mean, certainly personally, anecdotally, it was a huge success with my friends. What was the customer feedback that you received from the market? You mentioned that Brazil was maybe not a particularly big market for you before. Has that kind of led to a significant uptake in subscribers, or has that led maybe to sort of more people at least who are at least registered on the platform who you can then start to market towards?
I mean, I don't think we've seen a massive conversion from premium to freemium, but I don't think that was the intention.
Okay.
But I think if you look at the concurrencies and the numbers that we were seeing on the platform, the number of people who used DAZN after the Club World Cup versus before, the numbers were significant. So, yes, there was some good conversion that we saw, but the business was just really happy that DAZN was more understood and more known out in the industry.
Yeah. Okay. So, if we maybe start looking towards the future a little bit. So there's a sort of a variety of new features and functionality that are starting to come to sports streaming now. So at MediaKind, we've seen huge success with our MKO multi-view service, which is now live with Comcast, where they're doing PGA Tour golf, NFL, NCAA basketball, with gracious up to 600 parallel multi-view streams over the course of a weekend. You're doing some stuff with multi-view already within your ecosystem, but look forward a year, 2 years. What does the next level of fan engagement look like for you? Is it more enhanced multi-view? Is it more freemium? Is it lower latency? Or is it something else, maybe like stats overlays?
So I think, touching on the multi-view piece for a moment, I think multi-view seems to be quite a thing at the moment. There's lots of people talking to us about it. The technology vendors have a lot more solutions out there now around multi-view. Certainly our customers are now expecting it more. Like we launched multi-view on NFL Game Pass last season, and we had a really positive bit of feedback from that. But I think there's a long way to go with multi-view. We've effectively got two variants of multi-view. One is a more sort of traditional broadcast type of multi-view, where it's just created in a gallery, and then the customer can select the streams they want, where like the audio they want for the various different streams. But the really exciting bit is where you let the customer decide what they want on their multi-view. Some devices and some technology lets you do that, but then there's other devices, particularly like living room big screen devices. There's some real technical barriers to being able to allow a customer to do that. But some of the stuff that MediaKind are doing, I think really helps us get to the point where it feels like a customer is deciding what they want to watch in their multi-view.
I think what's really interesting for us is I was talking with one of our customers in the US last week, and they was talking about Roku and just how many of their customers are using like the $15 Roku device as their primary streaming device in their home. There's one player on there. You're not going to be doing client-side multi-view on there. So actually just the ability to introduce this functionality on there, and obviously with Comcast with their older Xfinity set-top boxes, bringing that premium feature to these lower-end devices has really, really benefited them in terms of consumer uptake, subscriber retention, and things like that. So I think for us, it's a really, really interesting topic, and it's one that, if you walk around the show floor, I think there's more and more vendors who are starting to realize that now, as there are sort of more and more customers out there who are wanting to bring this functionality into the forefront. Maybe moving on from multi-view on to sort of, we've touched on the sort of the lower latency side of things. So what about sort of freemium or other things like data overlays? What do you feel about them?
So I think one of the real powers of and the value of an OTT service is the connected nature that you have back to the customer. And I really think that means you can make the customer experience on the device far more immersive and far more engaging. So like you mentioned sort of stats and scores, being able to let the customer experience other bits outside the game, but without having to leave the game, I think is a really interesting bit. And I think the next 18, 24 months, I think we're going to see more and more of how do you keep the customer in the player, but still be able to see other things they want to watch. So getting a notification about a goal in another game that they want to watch and being able to seamlessly switch between and then jump back to see what's going on. Like there's some stuff we're seeing around like merchandising and being able to do like in-player, like you want to buy the shirt of your favorite, the player that's currently on the pitch. There's some really fascinating tech that just leverages the connected nature of OTT.
Yeah. I think we're seeing a lot of work going on right now around sort of automatic highlight generation, and really how to keep people engaged on the platform once the game's finished. Because kind of historically, the game or the match would finish, and it's like, oh, it's done. I'll turn it off and I'll go do something else. And we're hearing from our customers there's more and more of a drive to kind of keep people in that ecosystem, even if it's only for an extra 15, 20 minutes, because the additional sponsorship and advertising value that's then created is really quite significant. Are there any areas that you're looking at there?
That is a really key KPI for us now about how do we get more customer streamed minutes on the platform. And we can see the viewership of our events.
Yeah.
You know, as soon as the final whistle goes, as much as I think our creatives love to think they're going to watch people in the after show, most people, final whistle goes, they know the result and they drop off the platform. Mm-hmm. And for us, it's how do you get those customers to then go and watch something else without leaving it. And this is where you can use some of the personalization technology out there, you know, and be able to link what they are watching and what they like so that they sort of just seamless. It's a bit like a linear lean back experience where they just move seamlessly onto another bit of content. And, you know, they might only watch it for 5 minutes, but it's 5 more minutes than they wouldn't have got.
Yeah. Okay. We have a few minutes, so I think we can open things up to the audience at this point. If there's anyone who's got a question, please pop your hand up. There's a couple of floating mics that I think will come round. Gentleman over here. So give us 1 second, we'll get a mic to you. Otherwise, you have to really, really shout.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Where do you see the future of spatial and potential AI and AR glasses?
I think there is a space for it. We were trialing a bit, and we haven't pushed it out to customers yet. But using AR, sort of virtual reality type and augmented reality to really complement what's happening on the screen. Mm-hmm. Like we saw where you've got the video of the football happening, and then you've got like a graphical representation of the pitch, and you can see where all the players are. So there's some really, it makes it a really immersive experience. I mean, the other one that we saw was where you could feel like you were in the boxer's corner at a fight, and it felt like you were so close. I think there's applications out there. Mm-hmm. Whether they'll become the main viewing way people watch it, I'm not sure, but there's definitely a place for it, and there's some interesting stuff going on out there. Yeah.
We've done some quite interesting work with the NBA on the Apple Vision Pro. Actually, one of the first challenges was it's the classic, if the screen's this far from your eyeball, how do you get very, very high quality video at the lower bit rate? That's one of the first challenges to solve. If you've not had a chance to try their app and their service, and you can get your hands on an Apple Vision Pro, I highly recommend giving it a go, because just the ability to do the sort of the multi-view functionality they've done, having 4 or 5 games on at the same time, in a fully immersive environment, with the stats, with the fully time-synced leaderboards as well, it really is a very, very nice experience. And I think, you know, from my perspective, it's an indication of where we can potentially be in 5-10 years' time as the hardware becomes more readily available, and, you know, maybe a bit easier just to pop on your eyes and, you know, be in that shared environment as well. Anyone else? Lady at the front here, please.
I'm just interested because you obviously are global and you do a lot of different languages. Do you do automated AI highlights using AI to get different voices of commentators in there?
So we don't, but I think that's a really, really good use case for AI. We're using AI to do captioning at the moment, and that works really well. And the next, you know, real logical step is around that. How do you do commentary? Because at the moment, we always have to make some really tough decisions about, do we want to pay for a commentator? But if you can use AI to create as many different commentary variants, and we've seen some demos, and it's really impressive. So yeah, I think very soon we will start seeing more of that AI-driven commentary, and clip highlights as well. You know, being able to create a personalized highlights clip for what you like. The technology is definitely out there to do it, and yeah, I think it's really exciting. You couldn't have a conference without talking about AI, right? So, yeah.
I purposely tried not to mention the word, but thank you for bringing it up. We're seeing some very interesting results at the moment. So we've actually integrated third-party AI services into the NBA streaming ecosystem. Frankly, it does add a bit of latency. It does have to go off and be processed. There is that balancing act there as well. We're looking at it with a number of our other customers as well, who we're running proof of concepts with. What I will just say as a word of warning to anyone who is who's considering doing this is our real-world experience is not quite what you see in the demos at trade shows, but it's getting better very, very quickly. If I compare it to where it was a year ago, or even 6 months ago, it's iterating very, very fast. I think my view is the inflection point is coming probably at some point in 2026, but just be wary that it's maybe not quite there yet. Any more? Gentleman in the middle, please.
Hi. Do you see any new advertising formats coming with the AI and some of the other tech innovations you mentioned?
I think one of the areas, there's probably two actually, thinking about it. The first is, at the moment we do quite a lot of sort of classical L-shaped squeeze backs, two-box type advertising that it's inserted in the broadcast stream. I think there's a real opportunity to do that, but actually make that content that's inserted much more personalized. At the moment, it's not something we do, but I think there's an opportunity there. And then there's some of the sort of more clever stuff you can do around, like the billboards that sit around football grounds, where you can actually personalize the billboards to the individual users. So I definitely think there's more opportunity to monetize and do advertising in a more clever way. Some of which is sort of there already, and I think some of it needs a bit of work. But there's definitely opportunity there.
We're seeing this especially with customers who have a large archive, whether it's sports or whether it's 25 years, 30 years, 40 years of soap operas. It's all equally viable content, and it's then utilizing AI to work out the best place to put an ad break into that content so that you can then start to monetize it, offer it as an ad-supported tier within your platform, or just better monetize the content. We're seeing some very, very interesting results on that, again, running multiple proof of concepts with that. I think for us, really, the key thing there is it's not a case of going off and writing your own AI. There's many, many different AI services out there. It's working out the best one for any given moment in time and making sure that you have a flexible enough streaming platform and ecosystem that you can plug and play. It might be today there's a specific vendor who's the best in the world. There's probably someone at this show who in 2 years' time is going to have a $10 billion valuation and be ruling the world that we've never heard of today. So the ability to actually have an open and flexible ecosystem, I think from our perspective, is actually far more important than specifically who you're working with at any one given moment in time. I think we've got time for one more question. If there's anyone out there. Gentleman over there, please.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Is your plan with AI to automate everything with AI?
Sorry, say that again?
Is the plan to automate everything with AI?
Maybe not everything, but I think a good chunk of stuff.
Yeah.
AI can do a really good job of either creating content, doing the commentary bit that we talked about. But I think for your absolutely top tier content that you want to look as good as possible, I think it would be quite brave to go and say that, say the World Cup final, I'll just have commentary done with AI. But it's fascinating to see how well it does do, and there's a real use case for it, and it makes it easy to create content and a lot more cheaply, which means you can actually justify putting content on the platform that normally you wouldn't do. So it's yeah.
I mean, I certainly hope that speaking on panels at trade shows will not become an AI event, that James and I can still be here this time next year. Outside of that, there's a degree of trust as well, I think, for the consumer. I was at an AI conference last year. I think it was Wimbledon, someone from Wimbledon who was presenting on this, and it was all about how you actually build up trust with your audience as well, and how you need to label that content is AI to start to build up the trust, because there's a lot of potential for fake content to be put out there, or for content to be put out there and have a little mistake. I think if people understand it's AI, they're a little bit more understanding. So just by doing a big, huge jump into AI content creation, you do run the risk of also losing the trust of your fans. And that's a huge, huge thing. That's something that brands spend a huge amount of time and money and effort building up. So they need to be very, very careful not to throw it away. I'm no expert on this. It's purely anecdotal. It was very interesting for me to hear this from people who are looking at these areas. But I think as vendors and as people who are maybe running customer-facing organizations, it's something we need to be very, very aware of as well.
I think I saw a really interesting demo yesterday of a pundit that was, you could see the person, but it was all AI generated, and it looked real. Yeah. Like you could have AI pundits and you wouldn't know, and that's really quite scary, I think.
Yeah, it's especially if you're a pundit.
Yes.
Okay. So maybe let's just wrap things up now. So one last question for you, James. If there was someone in the audience who was looking to run a global streaming event in the next year or so, apart from the obvious, work with MediaKind, what would your one piece of advice be?
So this is going to be a really boring answer, so I apologize. But what I think was more critical in terms of making Club World Cup a success for us was the level of testing that we did. Like we tested. We ran more test events than we actually ended up events that we broadcast. And we found so many little issues through that testing, but it just meant that when we came to kickoff and the tournament starting, we were as confident as we were going to be. But yeah, just test.
Awesome, fantastic. I started my career as a test engineer, so I'm a big fan of testing. So with that, a huge thank you for James for joining us on stage today. Thank you everyone for joining us as well as attending. Your time is very much appreciated. I, for one, am super excited to see what comes next in the future of sports streaming. MediaKind, DAZN and FIFA Club World Cup demonstrated what can be proved. So let's see what comes next. Thank you, everyone.